Hi, welcome back. We left off on the synchrony of literacy development, and what this means is that there is strong evidence that reading, writing, and spelling development are highly related. Researchers have noticed that there's a strong developmental relationship between reading and spelling behaviors, and that they're very similar, like the reading phases are very similar to the spelling and writing phases. And so, what does this mean for us? Well, if we are conducting word study with students, we are addressing learning needs in more than one area. So, we're not just helping them with spelling, we're helping them in all areas of literacy because development in one area relates to development in the other areas. So, as said here, when teachers conduct word studies with students, they're addressing learning needs in all areas of literacy. Development in one area relates to development of other areas, and reading, writing, and spelling development all advance in stage-like progression and are integrally related. Okay, so here's a chart, and you can find this in Words Their Way if you have it. It's on page 16. And what this chart is, it's comparing researchers' descriptions of reading development to the spelling stages. So you'll see in parentheses next to the term the researcher who did this and the time that they did it. So we'll look at emergent speller and emergent reader. Okay, and so in this area, a child may undertake reading and writing, but as an adult, you'll recognize that it's more pretend than real. So when a student is writing, or it's more scribbling, letter-like forms, or random letters that have no phonetic relationship to the words. And here in reading, and I say read, like quote unquote read, a child is reading familiar books and they're mostly using memory and pictures as a cue to recite the text. And moving on to letter name, alphabetic spelling, and beginning reader. In this stage, the reader, so going back to emergent reader, the reader has transitioned to pretend reading to real reading. However, there are often mistakes and they heavily rely on systematic letter sound matches and their stored memory of words. So they heavily rely on context as well. So if the child is reading a book about maybe something to eat and they come across a word with a C, or say, let's pretend the sentence says the cake was good, the child might substitute cake for cookie or another word with the k sound. So those are the kind of mistakes they'll make. Also with alphabetic spelling, they might have many errors with vowels. So for instance, for light, they may omit the vowels in the early stages. So they might just have the initial and final consonant, the L and the T, or as they progress towards within word pattern spelling, they might accidentally misuse a vowel. So instead of saying bad, they may write bed, so getting that vowel sound confused. Here you'll notice that a child cannot read silently at this stage because they need to read aloud to vocalize the letter sounds. So if you ever taught first or kindergarten, you notice how noisy a classroom is because it is basically impossible for them to read silently. They need to vocalize the sounds. And I think according to research, a child starts to read silently when they can read 60 words per minute. Moving on to the next one, within word pattern spelling and transitional reader. These spellers and readers move into the within word pattern spelling stage when single letter sound units are consolidated into patterns or larger chunks, and other spelling regularities are internalized. So you might see a child being able to now spell hat and chat and flat because they are recognizing that chunk, the at chunk. So the goal is that you want them to recognize these chunks because as they read more challenging words, multisyllabic words, they can see chunks within the word, and that can definitely help with their decoding. Going on to syllables and affixes spelling in the intermediate reader. Here, the readers can mostly read text with good accuracy and speed, both orally and silently, and they're able to solve abstract problems and reflect metacognitively. So I feel like here a child can stay here for a while as they progress through it, and then once they can read fluently and really have those cognitive skills as they're reading, they are in this stage. And then here we are to our last one, the derivational stage. The spellers have a broader experience base that allows them to choose among a variety of reading styles to suit the text and their purposes for reading. And so this also applies to their writing style. So our goal as a teacher is to get all our students to this stage. Obviously, if you're teaching at the primary level, you're really building these foundations so that they can progress through the stages. Okay, and here's another look at the layers of orthography. And this is also in the Words Your Way book, page 19. I won't go fully into depth in it, but you can just kind of look at the reading and writing stages and the spelling stages. So I'll give you a moment just to look at that. Some of you might notice that your students might spell somewhere in this area or over here. Most of my intervention group are in this area for my first group, and then over here for my second group. And this definitely does correlate with their reading and writing stages. So as you can see, they're very interrelated. So if you are doing solid instruction in one area, you're definitely helping another area. Okay, so assessing orthographic knowledge and the writing processes. So why do we need to assess? Well, Word Study is not a one-size-fits-all program of instruction that begins in the same place for all learners. A Word Study instruction must match the needs of your child. So as mentioned that I've did the Words Your Way inventory, I use that with my DIBELS scores and my basic phonics skills test, and I've used that to group my student because we know that students who need intervention cannot really do some of the work that is in the regular classroom, especially when it relates to the readings. They need that strong intervention where they're getting a personalized word list, instruction with phonics, phonemic awareness. So it is very important that we do assess these areas as well. I know it can be very timely, so what I do is I like to assess the students who I feel who are in need of intervention or extra small group practice. Diagnosing a child's spelling abilities will help you determine their instructional level so that you can teach to that level. So the Zone of Proximal Development by Vygotsky. And here's another one. Child score on a developmental spelling inventory was a more powerful predictor of decoding than phonemic awareness tasks. So this is just one study, but according to this, that the spelling inventory is a very powerful indicator. So and try using it in your classroom and see what kind of results you get. Okay, so how do we assess? We can observe students writing, their reading, and conduct a qualitative spelling inventory. So altogether, they provide a rich collection of information. I have not done this with my RTI group. Actually, that's coming up next week. I've done informal reading assessments and spelling inventory. Now I just need to get a writing piece, but again, it can provide a lot of information. Okay, so you can also gather writing samples. And so it can give you, like I said, a lot of information about their sound symbol system, understand the functions of writing. Most authentic way to collect would be to have them bring a sample assignment they are working on in the classroom. So if you meet with your student you can ask them to do this. I would not count on them bringing it because we can't guarantee it. So don't expect them to do it, but you can ask. But I would definitely get in a informal writing uh, assessment. Okay, and then here, if you look in your Lipson and Wixon book, there's an observation checklist that you can look at. This checklist focuses on the writing process. So as you're looking at the student, you're checking off different things as they work through the writing process. So if this would be more of an in-classroom thing, because if you're assigning a task or assigning a prompt and you are having your students work through the writing process, you would use this checklist to informally observe them. Classroom practice and teacher values can have a huge impact on writing attitude and performance. This is a huge thing. So having that classroom environment, as you know, can impact how a student perceives a certain task. So think about how you act when you're teaching writing or when you're teaching reading. It can definitely have a huge impact on their attitude towards it. If you're making it a really fun experience for them, they'll be highly motivated to do it. My favorite subject is to teach writing, and I feel that because I love teaching it, my students have a very positive attitude when we get to writing during the day. Okay, informal classroom-based assessment. So in Chapter 9, it discusses ways to do this. Examine written product for composition and mechanics. So you want to kind of look at these separately. So how are they working with mechanics, and then how are they working with composition? Samples of written work should be gathered as evidence for the product children create and the process they use. And this can really give us an idea on the difficulties they may be having. Daily work samples, journal entries, work from writer's workshop. All these can provide rich information about their developing knowledge, their skills, and motivation. If you're doing a mini lesson on commas, are they using that skill in their work? If you've taught them different ways to work through the writing process, are they actually doing it? Are they struggling with it? So all this evidence can provide a lot of information about your student. And lastly, student writings, especially unedited rough drafts, are a goldmine of information about orthographic knowledge. And like it says, basically it's a huge gold mine. Okay, structured writing assessments, and this is also in your book. It's on page 353. So dictated stories provide information about oral language, print awareness, knowledge of print conventions, and story structure. Have student draw a picture, then write any portion of the story they can. Then the child dictates the story to the teacher, who writes it exactly how it's produced. So there's a chart on there so you can refer to it on how to analyze it and how to assess your student. And this can look very different depending on the age level and the ability of the student. So it can just be simply a drawing and then they tell you the story back. It can be a drawing with a lengthy story, but you're looking for a few things. You're looking for language development. When they're speaking to you, are they speaking in complete sentences, single words? Are they using descriptive language? Do they speak clearly? Does the story make sense? Does it have some kind of organizational pattern? Is there a conclusion? So there's many things you can look for when you do this kind of assessment. Okay, so prompted writing activities is another one. Here you're asked the child to write anything he or she knows how to write. All the words I know, student makes a list of all the words they know how to write. And supported writing, child draws a picture, then writes about it, or you can brainstorm with the child to generate several possible topics. And again, this would look a lot different based on their reading and writing and spelling level. And you can look for more information on page 355 and 356. All right, I'm going to stop right there because I'm at my 15-minute mark.